What is this sense of place and why is it important? A sense of place for me is really something that is memorable and gives you some joy and some sense of a positive experience that you may have had in a particular place. It's about scale, it's about walkability, it's about a natural amenity that may be part of something, be it a river or be it a harbor. Places like Paris, walking down the Champs-Élysées or the Eiffel Tower, Montmartre or Notre Dame. These are the places that clearly have a sense of place and a memory. London, even Munich, places that have become much more pedestrian-oriented in the more recent past. Smaller places like Edgartown Village is a walkable village, 350-year-old village. That's a quintessential New England place. These are all places we can go on and on about that have a sense of place. But what do they have in common? What they really have in common is an intimacy of scale, a place where you can recognize the individual across a public square, that the buildings have a human-scaled height about themselves. People who live in those buildings still relate to the streetscape. If you notice in Paris, they throw open the windows and they have those little balconies and flower gardens spilling over those balconies. These are places that are enjoyed not just by the public, but the inhabitants as well. Edgartown really became known as a whaling capital in the 1800s. And with that wealth came these grand captain's houses built up and down Main Street and on North Water Street and South Water Street, with the wonderful widows' walks where the wives would watch for the husbands to come back from the sea with their merchants and goods that came from all over the world. And that character continues to this day in the historic nature of the houses that are all throughout the village. With the decline of the whaling industry, Edgartown came into disrepair, if you will. So much was lost in terms of the wealth. And what was left was the vestiges of these buildings and grand domes from another time. It really was, for me, an opportunity to create another sense of place, recognizing the past, but thinking about the future. Many years ago, I put together what I call a primer for the revitalization of downtown Edgartown and said, what can we do to make this seem more cohesive, at the same time, a richer environment? So many of the storefronts were tinted plate glass, as an example. I suggested putting clear glass in, maybe some mullions in the windows. I used awnings as a device to start to set up color palette and also use that as a potential graphic opportunity on the drop. I said get rid of the metal storefront doors and introduce wooden doors that, again, may have mullion glass in them. I introduced the concept of using flower boxes underneath those picture windows. Introducing classic hardware on the doors, so the things you touch and feel become important to set the tone and character. And I suggested that perhaps as an overall theme, that all of the signage should be on perpendicular wooden object signs that would define, as you walk down the street and the sidewalk, what those shops were all about. And then I suggested bricking the sidewalks with a granite curb, introducing pedestrian-scaled street lights that would recall perhaps the old gas lights of another time, and changing the lighting to all incandescent lighting in the shops as a way to soften the streetscape as people walk down the street. This idea of really taking a micro look at every single storefront in the village and every building type and recognize that there are opportunities for the second floor to create apartments for people to live right in the downtown that would be reasonable in rent or cost, and that these second floors are really like a European village where people live up above storefronts and they then can experience the whole streetscape. So really create a kit of parts that shop owners and owners of buildings can look to incorporate in their individual pieces of real estate in a way that celebrates the greater good. Edgartown today has an entirely different mix of merchandising. The t-shirt shops are gone, quality restaurants are there, quality shops are there. We have animated Winter Street, which is the second main street, if you will. A huge part of the turnaround was my design for the Atlantic Chop House and Boat House. What we did was we turned a dilapidated 1960s eyesore building known as the Navigator into a structure that really became the catalyst for the revitalization of downtown Edgartown. With its rich architectural detailing, public restaurant on the first floor, widened sidewalks with cafe seating, and most importantly, public access to the harbor. It was the first time in many, many years that the public can meander around, look at the boats, experience the harbor experience, and not be on someone's private property. It really became an important icon in the Edgartown street scene. What I would offer another young architect to consider is look at the community you live in or the community you work in. Look for the natural amenity. If you're on a harbor or you're on a river or there's a waterfall or there's a stream or there's a green open park, try to capitalize on the unique elements that are natural to the site. If there's history there, go back and study the history. Understand the character and scale of the buildings as they were in the past, perhaps not what they look like today. And really take to heart the scale and the materials and the authenticity that makes a space genuine and authentic.